realizing that there was such a lack of homogeneity. They were all men, they were all the same, the same social class, the same studies, and how that influences what gets, decided as content, what gets decided as the news agenda, what gets decided as entertainment, and so how do we as consumers also and as viewers are being fed the views of just half of the population, and then how much the female perspective, the female gaze was missing completely from the media landscape. So it became at some point, as much as I enjoy the world of technology and satellite distribution was really fascinating, but it's gradually, I felt that I wanted to, have impact, and I wanted to empower women, and I wanted to move into that space more like the content side.
I'm so excited for this roundtable because we have an amazing panel speaker here. They're gonna share their secrets to success. So we're gonna start this roundtable, overcoming fear as a professional woman in the creative film industry, with Neha Hooda.
Yeah, that's right.
She's a BXF executive producer. Leigh Ariana, Trifari, actor and film producer. Vianessa Castaños, she's an actor and film producer. And Melanie, founder of Artscape Studio. She's an artist as well. And Claudia Vaccarone, inclusion, gender, and diversity in media advisor. All of you are professional women. And from your experience, I would like you to introduce yourself. You have around 5 minutes to introduce yourself, telling us what you do and your story, like how you ended up doing what you're doing now. We can start with Neha.
Sure. Thank you so much for this wonderful panel, Rosa. I'm so excited and looking forward to the lovely discussion that will unfold today. So I started out in VFX over a decade ago. I've mostly been working in post-production, in which visual effects has taken up the longest tenure of my career. And I think I landed in visual effects because I don't think there was anything else I could do. I remember I was younger, I would go to the movie theater, sometimes all by myself, and I would wait all the way to the end scrolls. And I knew it that this is where my name was going to be. So for me, I graduated with a degree in commerce from university, then went on to do a bit of sound, and then eventually got into visual effects. And I live between India and Europe now. And I work with clients from States to Europe to India. So that's a bit about me.
Thank you. What about you, Leigh? Leia, tell me, because I don't know. I don't think I pronounced it well. Right.
It's actually pronounced Leigh. And if you think of classic Hollywood actresses like Janet Leigh and Vivian Leigh, you'll never get it wrong.
Perfect. Leigh, it is.
As Rosa mentioned, I am an actress, and I'm also a film producer. I didn't start out to be a producer. Actually, before I moved to the UK 5 years ago and met my lovely husband, I was working as an actress in New York City, and a friend of mine needed help with a production. And I honestly had no idea what that meant. I thought producers were just men in suits who collected trophies once a year at the Oscars. And why in the world would I want to do that? But it helped because he was my friend. And in the end, I got a production credit, and I got myself a little profile in IMDb. And I went to my first film festival. And that's when I discovered, wow, I really love being a producer because I helped make it happen. And I never stopped talking about it. Now fast forward 5 years, and I'm in the UK, and I'm want to be an actress. And then Brexit really happened, and then lockdown came along. And so I was like, what am I going to do now? So here I am in the UK, unable to work as an actress. And what I did is I answered an ad on Facebook, and I ended up taking a production job with a lovely UK director. And from then, I have worked on 3 films. a TV series in the process of being commissioned. And my network has just exploded to the point where I have formed my own production company this year. So that's my story.
Vianessa, just how it's
Vianessa,
spelled.
yes.
Yes. It's funny that you asked, because people will legitimately ask me, they'll look at my name written down and they'll say, did you spell your name wrong? And I'm like, no, I've been spelling my name for, nearly 40 years now. I think I got it. So yeah, I'm Vianessa Castaños. Nice to meet you all. I am an actor, writer, producer. So I'm hyphenate, I'm a hybrid, but it's interesting because all of the jobs that I do are interrelated, and I don't feel like there is one without the other. So I knew that I was going to work in entertainment since I was about 3. I knew that I wanted to be a performer, and I also knew that I wanted to be a producer without knowing what a producer was. I knew that I wanted to make television shows, and that's something that's carried through my entire life. I started acting professionally, and by mean professionally, the textbook definition of making money at 26, though I had been, studying theater and being in theater clubs since much younger. And I'd been writing much earlier. I used to write stories. The first story I got published was, I think, my 11th year in school. I had a story published in a newspaper, and it's just something that I always did. I've always been a storyteller. And when I graduated university, actually, I was like, okay, well, I went to school I actually studied language and literature because I was like, my degree doesn't really matter. It just matters how I apply myself. That's something that I learned very early on. And since I knew I wanted to be a writer, I was like, well, it makes sense to study a language, and it makes sense to study literature, and I'll find a way to implement that. But I knew I wanted to move to LA to pursue acting seriously. But I've always been very, very strategic. I was actually having a conversation with a fellow artist recently where I do consider myself an artist, but I'm very business oriented as well, which apparently is an anomaly, which is shocking to me. I've always been very strategic. So I was like, well, before I move to Los Angeles, I'm going to get some real world work experience so that when I go to Los Angeles, I can actually have a job while I pursue my acting career and make some money. So I actually lived in Washington, D.C. for 3 years, working in advertising and PR, because I wanted to find something that was related tangentially to entertainment. So I was working as a copywriter. I wrote scripts for commercials, radio, copy for websites, copy for press releases, articles, and then took off to LA and had a pretty promising career. I was in LA for 11 years, was still writing, freelancing, and got burnt out at the 11-year mark. And I was like, you know what, I need to step away from LA. I don't know that I want to be here anymore. I need to reassess what I'm doing with entertainment, but I kept on writing. So I got more freelance clients. The past 2 years, I've actually been writing for Meta. So I've been one of their writers until my recent contract ended last year. And funnily enough, I left in LA in 2016 to focus on writing, and I was traveling, so I was also doing a lot of travel writing. And in the midst of all that, ended up booking an acting job in Spain. So I came to Spain on an artist visa, and once that ended, I was like, okay, I feel like I'm in a good place to finally start my production company that's been percolating for years. And, got to it, worked on my business plan, went back to the States for about a year in Miami, where I was just, again, writing and working on my business plan. And ultimately, I determined I wanted to live in Spain, and I wanted to start my business in Spain because I'm focused on projects that center diverse and racially and ethnically and culturally diverse protagonists, which is very lacking here. And I applied for my entrepreneur visa with my business plan to launch the production company in Spain. Got approved, and here I am. It's been a very busy. When did I get approved? Actually got approved last January, but obviously this has been planning for much longer with projects that I've been developing for years, and it's been going well. It's a very busy time, especially right now, getting ready for MIP TV next month. If anybody's going to be there in April, hit me up. And I hope
thank you so much. And I think congratulations on that visa, because we know those who have immigrated is having a visa, having a permanent resident, having the citizenship. It's just, oh my God, it is hard. So every time that, I got the residence, I got the visa, just congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you. And just to that point, every visa and every immigration story has its own process. But funnily enough, I was told by my lawyer that the entrepreneur visa is one of the hardest ones to get because they usually only approve tech companies. So I'm like, okay, I feel pretty proud of myself that I got this visa that's usually reserved for tech companies. So I feel like I'm definitely in the right place at the right time.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Claudia, share with us your story.
Hello, everyone. So exciting to hear already the other panelists' profiles. So I am Claudia Vaccarone. I'm an independent consultant, and today I support media companies with their gender equality, diversity, and inclusion goals and efforts. But I've only recently started doing this. How did I get here? Well, I'm really fortunate because I've had already several lives, several personas, several parcours. I'm actually Italian. I grew up in Italy. I spent my 20s in the United States. I studied there marketing and communications and PR. I started working in Silicon Valley, then decided to come back to Europe in my 30s. And I stumbled into the world of technology and broadcasting. So I worked for one of the first European startups combining broadcasting and IP technology right at the beginning of the internet. And I'm starting to giving away my age. And then from there, I moved to Paris, where I lived for 17 years, and I worked for one of the leading satellite operators. So I was operating not so much in the creative space, but more in the technology and distribution space. And as a woman, non-engineer in a very male engineering dominated space, I suddenly realized that finally feminism was something that I needed, that, I had discounted earlier in my career thinking that, meritocracy would have been sufficient. But like probably many of you, once you start also having kids and you're confronted with the pregnancy, the motherhood penalty, like all sorts of realities started manifesting themselves that I didn't foresee, and realizing that it was really systemic, that it wasn't just me, but it was like happening to so many other women. It was a huge moment of reckoning. Also in my position within the satellite, I had several roles in marketing communications, but then evolved eventually in market research and customer experience. And so I had the opportunity to run workshops and support the distribution strategies of our clients. So I was liaising with the C-level of media companies, and all of a sudden realizing that there was such a lack of homogeneity. They were all men, they were all the same, the same social class, the same studies, and how that influences what gets, decided as content, what gets decided as the news agenda, what gets decided as entertainment, and also how do we as consumers also and as viewers are being fed the views of just half of the population, and then how much the female perspective, the female gaze was missing completely from the media landscape. So it became at some point, as much as I enjoy the world of technology and satellite distribution was really fascinating, but it's gradually, I felt that I wanted to, have impact, and I wanted to empower women, and I wanted to move into that space more like the content side. And I started doing a lot of research. I joined a lot of women's networks. I worked both on myself, on my own professional development, looking at things that we've seen this morning about, developing your personal brand and learning how to network and this type of things. Also studying, like this whole space, trying to understand how media works, and what are the issues exactly, learning what data was available about female representation, for instance. And then from there, gradually, I kind of built a new, new skill set, new professionalities. And then in 2018, I moved to Geneva, Switzerland, where I live today, to join the European Broadcasting Union, which is the largest alliance of public service broadcasters. And, initially with a role in strategy to renew their portfolio of services, but, soon enough, I was able to create a strategic initiative to use that platform to really incite broadcasters to increase and step up their efforts in gender equality, whether it was behind the camera or on screen. And so we built a community, we did research on what the best practices were, we published some guidelines that are still available and accessible to everybody for free. It's called All Things Being Equal. And then from there, I went into consulting because some of the members, they started contacting me to say, like, can you help us, on an individual basis? We really want to accelerate, we want to go faster. So it's a dimension that I often thought about in my career, but I never dared to consider. I never, speaking of fear, it was this big fear of kind of like, will I be able to sustain it by myself? Will I be able to be credible? Will I be able to sell my services? But sometimes, life just serves you the perfect challenge, and I'll talk about it later on in one of the questions. And the conditions were at some point were just like all aligned, and I just went for it. And I found myself pitching, also to new customers, and the demand was there, the need was there. So I've been doing that now for almost 3 years. And just finished also like a 1-year mission with Netflix in their inclusion strategy team in EMEA, working both with the talent team internally, but also advising on content with the creative executives. And there's at the same time a great sense of mission, accomplishment, and sense of like, every day, when I finish some of these missions, feeling that you're contributing to something much greater to yourself, but also that has such an impact on society. And also a huge frustration, because we also know that for every good piece of content that is out there, we're also facing an unprecedented crisis with, like, the way social media is vehiculating terrible stuff to teen and teenagers. There's a huge, youth crisis, huge depression rates in young women. So the work is far from being done.
Thank you so much, Claudia. And not the less important, but our final speaker of the roundtable is Melanie. Melanie, tell us about you and your story.
Hi, everybody. Rosa, thank you for having me here today. Wow, that was a really nice introduction round. And yeah, let's start. My name is Melanie. I'm Canadian, but moreover, a Newfoundlander, actually. And I think that identification in who I am is really important, especially considering what I've created here in Denmark. I am the CEO and founder of Artiscape Studios, which is a studio that offers tons of creative activities and outlets, but also is the home to the Artiscape Arts Collective, which is an all-female arts collective that provides opportunities for artists to develop their own revenue and to be able to work in their craft in Denmark. We have both internationals and Danes, so it's also quite lovely. In addition to that, I do work with ImArt, and I sit on the advisory board for ImArt, which is an immigrant and migrant networking service for artists in Denmark. We're doing wonderful work with them and just launched our Nordic festival called Artiful across 5 Nordic countries, so that's really exciting. And yeah, I think that's about it for the things that I do here in Denmark. And one of the things that I'm focused on mainly, well, I'm also the co-founder of Warrior Women, so all of this together, I'm working to create community, an arts-based community specifically for women to be able to provide these opportunities. I moved here to Denmark 12 years ago this year, and when I came, actually, I mean, I needed the job right away, so I have experience as a chef for the last 20 years. So I got a job working in the kitchen. And it wasn't until I became pregnant with my daughter that I decided that I needed to change what I was doing and what direction I was in. I had taught art for years back home in Canada, and I really felt like it was time for me to get back into that creative world. And I have to say, it was one of the most difficult things that I ever had to do. I knew that I wanted it. I knew that I needed to make that change, and I knew that I wanted to have a community around my children as they grew up, one that they could be inspired and have this kind of universe of creativity and people that were close to them. And I didn't know how to do it. And as I was trying to figure this out, I just realized, wow, this is such a difficult task to find out where you fit in Copenhagen, in Denmark, in a very foreign country, and not knowing how small it actually is now. Now it feels like a little village to me, but at the time, it was just crazy. Like I had no idea where the ends of the city were, literally, in terms of actually geographically. I really didn't know how to get around, but also like where did it end? Where did the art start? What different communities were developed here, and who was supporting who, and how did I get into that? And I tried so many times and had the doors closed. And after Matilda was born, I said, okay, well, I think I just need to open my own door and try and offer that for other women, because I know how difficult it is. And I would never want somebody else to feel that struggle that I felt, trying to find a place and trying to validate your art and understanding that what you're creating is important and that you do have a voice and you have something to say. So I created the collective, and we were a group of 10 women. And we started just as a studio, and then I had this idea to grow it into a cafe and an art space where people can come in off the street and connect to their own creativity, and that's what we have now. So we started in 2020, and now today, 3 years later, we are sold out art space. Actually, all of our classes are sold out. All of the teachers are selling their services and making money and revenue from their art. We are selling art pieces, and we have such a large community that accesses the space. Both, we just had an exhibition opening actually for our students, where we gathered together and shown kind of like a guest appreciation, student appreciation night, where we could show exactly what it is that we are doing here. So yeah, that's a little bit about me and what I'm trying to do here in Denmark.
I mean, thank you so much, all of you, for being part of this roundtable and for being open to talk about this. Like, this is a very vulnerable topic. I think not all women out there are open to share their fears, because they might feel vulnerable and they might feel that they're not doing a great job. But I don't think, but fear is part of ourselves. It's part that it's something that is there. It will never disappear. Sadly, it is with us. And you talking openly about this and sharing your story with the attendees is just amazing. Thank you for that. The first question is, what is your mindset routine when you feel defeated and want to curl up in bed?
I think that's a thing that happens to a lot of people. And I think in creative industries, it's not just about the job, but there's a constant thing about, you being positioned as a woman in comparison to other people in a workforce. I work in post-production and across Europe, across India that I worked, or even States for that matter. I think on the post-production side, it's a very skewed ratio. So you tend to have a lot of men in the room in comparison to women. In India, things are changing, but it's still not, where we would ideally like to have it. A lot of people are happy with it, like, hey, we increased to 5% of the workforce, 10% of the workforce, but it's not as diverse. So here's a constant thing. So when it happens, and it will happen, you have to, at least what I do is, you have to learn to understand that it's okay. You will have days that are not going to be the most perfect. You will have days where a lot of things are really not going to go out, but it's okay. And it's okay, because you have to really build up on your mental strength. And I think as a woman in a creative field, this is what I have felt, and I'm assuming this would be true for arts also, whether it's acting or producing, very definitely I can say, because I'm a producer too. Every single day, a part of your perception about as a professional is part about the work that you do, and a part is also that, okay, hey, she's a woman, and can she do this or not? So there's a two-part segment to your work that comes in. And I think it's very important to build on your mental strength, your emotional ability to deal with these things in comparison to a lot of, the work related, the skill set that is important. So for me, what is extremely important is every day, and that's my standard every day, I will not look at my emails. I will not switch on social media. I will not be scrolling through Instagram. So the first part of my day is my building my mind. So I feel that, every day I wake up and I train my mind to have a bulletproof mind. You cannot have things coming into and affecting your the way you feel. Everything kind of ties up that way for me. And I think if you are in a position, if you're able to build yourself, your mind in a way that you don't get affected very easily, because this is a hard industry to be in. It's extremely hard to succeed. Most women don't rise to the top. It's a given thing. And you look at the leadership positions that are there across the globe, the number of women who reach the top are very, very few. So most women will tend to either leave in the middle. So you have to have that thing that I'm going to go all out, and it's not to kind of prove to somebody else, but for your own self. But at the same time, knowing that you have the strength to pull through a hard day, knowing that there will be hard days and you're going to come through it, but most importantly, knowing that you've got this. And even if nobody else believes in you, you can still figure your way around it. So sometimes it's just about holding on. So I often feel that, when it's a hard day, the most obvious thing could feel like, okay, this is the end of the rope. This could be it. And that, kind of anxiety, panic comes in. I think it's important to even read on those signs for your own self, that how do you respond to certain situations, and just getting ahead of it. So if you're able to get ahead of it, you have the possibility to build your mind every morning. Everybody can have a different discipline. Meditation definitely helps. I know you've had a session on that. And I personally, so this is what I do every morning. I'll say 20 minutes. I'm going to shut out the world and everything. And I'm just going to pick out certain thought processes that build my mind the right way, make me feel strong, and strengthen my life that day. So that's my morning routine. And I think this helps me significantly. And also, I think as you grow through your career, it's not just about you building yourself, but also about what is it that you can do for your teams, for your environments that you may be in. Be it your colleagues that are working with you, be it your clients. If you're able to kind of spread that strength across, and be the person in the room who makes everybody understand and feel that it's okay to make mistakes. Don't chase after being a perfectionist. Chase after giving your complete effort, your all to whatever your projects are doing. And if it doesn't work, it's okay. There's going to be another day tomorrow, and you're going to build up. Some days may not be the best, but know for a fact the sun will come out again tomorrow. It will shine, and it's going to be another day, and you will have one more chance to get it right. So just not giving up on yourself is something that I practice a lot.
That was so inspiring, Neha. I think we share a lot of similar routines. When I wake up first thing in the morning, I always work on meditation. I work on a little bit of exercise, and then I work on my journaling and reading. And I try to read something that I know is going to set me up for that positive mindset for the day. Some of my favorite authors are Marie Forleo, who wrote Everything is Figure Outable. And I love that book because really, truly, everything can be figured out. If I wake up and I feel totally defeated on something, I just start repeating that phrase over and over again. Everything can be figured out. Everything can be figured out. It might not be this second, but if I just keep saying it and saying it and saying it, sometimes I've said it like 100 times before it started to sink in. But the thing is that there is an answer. And the thing is that if I feel defeated or frustrated or, feeling broken, the first thing I realize is that I can never be a failure. Failure is not a personal characteristic. Failure is an event, and it's a subjective event, because I don't fail. I either win or I learn. And the thing is, the learning might take a little bit longer to come around to, but somebody had said to me, I have a mentor, he's an industry veteran in California, and he said to me one time, you are 100% responsible for everything you bring into your life. And the one thing you can control is your thoughts and your actions. So, when you think, oh my God, this person was so mean to me, or I had a bad time at the office, or I had a fight with a director, or because I work in film, or I had a fight with another producer. It's like, okay, what did I bring to this? And then the other thing is, it can't be figured out. You know, like what did I contribute to this, and how can I use my positive mindset to flip the script and find a solution? So it comes back to, you know, just basically, you know, setting yourself up for that kind of mindset, and just knowing when you wake up in the morning, you know, or when you're having a difficult time, the first thing you just say is like, I'm not a failure. I'm not a failure. What can I learn from this? You know, what needs to be, what is the true essence of this, and how can I move forward from it?
Yes,
and I think
thank you.
also another thing too, if I could just add one more thing, is instead of trying, I know as women, we try to do so many things. Like for me, I don't have children, but I have a husband and I have a pet, and we like to travel and we like to do things. And so finding, when I got thrust into the production jobs in the middle of lockdown, I really had to think long and hard about how was I going to balance all these things, because I came over as a spouse. Actually, I came on a spousal visa, and that's actually coming up for final renewal this year, so I can't wait for that. But I came over, you know, as a companion and a partner, you know, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I can do production work, and that's like that involves a whole different shift. And how can I balance the two? And I think it's really important to just to kind of, it might sound a little trivial, but actually put it in the diary. Like, okay, today I'm going to work on this amount of family time, or I'm going to work 5 hours here, and I'm going to do 2 hours here. And just basically whatever gets written down gets done. And I've just found that carving out those spaces, like on the weekends, I try so hard. Saturday might be a work family day, but Sunday, 100% family. 100% family. I'm just out of the office. And I mean, not that I'm not checking emails, but I deliberately don't go on social media. I definitely don't play on my computer. I don't do any internet shopping or anything like that. I'm strictly available to my family 100% on Sundays. So I think that's also important too, is to give yourself permission to have those times. And working more doesn't mean working better. I subscribe to Robin Sharma's model, another author I enjoy, of 5 great hours. 5 great hours. And I've been able to do it because I map it out and I say, okay, for 5 hours, this thing gets my total focus. He calls it the total bubble of the TBTF, total bubble of total focus. And for 5 hours, that's all I do. And then when I'm done, it's time for a break. And I give myself permission to take that break. And the break could be a walk, it could be a nap, it could be having coffee in the garden, it could be anything. But the thing is, you take the break and allow yourself to have the breaks, because doing more is not necessarily better. And if you're feeling defeated, you definitely can't do more, because you're going to be driving yourself in circles the whole time. Don't feel defeated. Don't call yourself a failure. Spend time on your mindset first thing in the morning. Just set it up and allow yourself to regroup during the day.
I think I'm probably going to skew in the opposite direction of everybody else. I'm very much a feel what you feel person. I think if you feel defeated, you should allow yourself to feel defeated. If you're frustrated, feel frustrated. I feel like, and just to preface this, I'm somebody who I have lifelong anxiety, lifelong depression, and I feel like I have a great handle on it. And there's always a societal pressure to hustle, to get up and go, to fix your mindset, to do this. And obviously those tools that exist, if they help you, that's great. But I feel like a lot of the times people avoid feeling their feelings, and that's not healthy either. And as an artist, as somebody who, you know, either when I'm writing a story or when I'm writing a script, or if I'm bringing a character to life as an actor, I need to be able to tap into those emotions, and I need to understand, you know, I do a lot of, when I'm preparing for roles, for example, I read a lot of books on psychology. I almost feel like I have like a degree in psychology from how much I study, you know, different perspectives and different emotions. But I think it's important to feel emotion. If I'm defeated, I will stay in bed until, you know, maybe I'll watch something. Eventually I'll be like, you know what, I need to get up and go. I need to go for a walk. I do love walking. It does help my mood a lot. When I'm frustrated, I let myself feel frustrated, because these are all emotions that'll pass, and you'll learn from them. You'll learn how to process those emotions the next time they come up again. But also there are lessons there for you to learn. I mean, we all have frustrations at work. We all have frustrations in the industries we work in. With the work that I do as a producer and as a scriptwriter, as I mentioned earlier, the projects that I develop are centered on protagonists of color, of different racial backgrounds, of different ethnicities. And I get invited to do talks about inclusion and diversity. And, I get frustrated. These are not new topics. These are not new conversations, but you are always met with somebody who's like, well, what about this? Or I've never heard of this before. And it's like, do you have Google? And it's annoying and it frustrates me. And I let myself be annoyed and I let myself be frustrated. And I usually express it to them. Like, how have you not, like, are we not living on the same planet? So I'm definitely not an avoider. I go very head on into my emotions. And along with that, I am guided by my emotions. If I want to step away from work, like I said earlier, I will go for a walk. I paint as well. So I paint watercolors. And it's funny, I had told myself I do like this goal setting thing every year. And I was like, okay, once a week on Sundays, I'm going to carve out time to do more watercolor painting, because I do enjoy watercolor. I do enjoy painting. It does help me de-stress. It helps me kind of recenter in a lot of ways. But the moment that I gave it to myself as a task that I'm going to do this every Sunday, I can't even tell you the last time I painted. I cannot tell you the last time I painted, because it started to feel like an obligation. And then that started to stress me out. And it's not supposed to be stressful. It's supposed to be an avenue for me to express myself and to de-stress. So I think a lot of it is really feeling those emotions so that you understand yourself and you understand what you need and you understand what your triggers might be. Because, journaling might work for one, it doesn't work for others. Even as a writer, I've tried to journal, like I probably have like 10 pages from the past 3 years. But what works for me is allowing myself to feel what I feel. If I want to walk away from my job, for my work for the day, I will walk away from work for the day, and I'm able to do that, fortunately, because I freelance, and two, the production company is mine, so it's a little bit different depending on deadlines and obligations. But yeah, I think that would be my biggest piece of advice is if you have tools that work for you, great. But also really allow yourself to exist. You're a human being, and we're meant to have emotions, and we're meant to experience things in different ways, not necessarily, have the same response and reaction as everybody else, and take the time to figure out what that is for you.
It's interesting because as I listen, to the previous panelists, I find myself in between on the spectrum from the morning routines to kind of like just like, going with the feelings. So yes to morning routines to a certain extent. For me, it's also about, waking up and being mindful not to be invaded right away by the digital, income. Journaling, definitely doing sports every day, like moving your body, something that you had put forward also, Rosa, this morning. Also nourishing connections, like, making sure that every day you have purposeful conversations, whether it's your parents, your kids, your family, your girlfriend, or, people that you care about, and they're going to make you feel good. So like nourishing those connections and nourishing your souls. So every day being mindful also of what are you inputting in your brain, right? Like what kind of movies, what are you reading, what are you listening to? Not just being very serious at curating that and choosing purposely stuff that is going to nourish you, it's going to make you grow, it's going to stimulate you, and and staying away from just like the fast food of content, basically. I would add also like cold showers, which is something recent. I'm a Mediterranean type, so I've always been into like long hot showers, and I love the sun and I love the sea. But like a couple of years ago, my husband actually got me into this, and so we started like doing that. And you can do it in different ways. I take a long hot shower, but then I end with a good 2 minutes of cold. And it totally changed my energy in the morning. Like it totally, it wakes you really up, and it gives you like a different head start, because someone was actually in the chat also mentioning about like, what if you're not a morning person? And I'm definitely not a morning person. So cold shower has been a big awakening of in the last couple of years. But then I also totally relate with what Vianessa was saying about, there are moments that you just have to sit with the pain, and because it's there and it's there for a reason. And I think that, failure is absolutely universal. Everybody goes through it. Everybody experiences. We heard this morning, like, not everybody shows it. So, we tend to see people always showing what's great and bright in their life, but tell yourself that everybody has moments of reckoning. And then, it's important how you go into it, if you embrace it as an opportunity for growth and what am I supposed to learn here? Why am I feeling this way? How can I prevent this from happening the next time? What should I have said? Or how can I prevent from working with this type of people if I now know that, it's not comfortable for me? But also, let's also be mindful as women, we are much more sensitive in that sense. We tend to be, we hold ourselves to much higher standards. I have 2 boys and it's fascinating, I see them growing up, they're teenagers, and I'm just blown away by the level of assertiveness and how much grace they give themselves. Men, they just give so much grace. And while, for the same level of imperfection, we just so easily are ready to go to the deeper depths. So let's also be mindful of that, and let's be honest with ourselves into was it really that terrible? Why am I uncomfortable? What can I learn from it? And I must say that in that sense also, what I've been learning in my work in the space of inclusion has taught me a lot into seeing things from a different perspective, and having less friction moments, whether it's in my personal life or in my professional life, really in my interactions, in my relationships, really leaning in with a lot of honest curiosity. And then when I hear, or when there's an interaction which previously I would have judged uncomfortable or abrasive or intrusive, it all depends upon also what's your posture. And sometimes if you just exercise extreme curiosity and you ask follow-up questions and you try to understand where that person is coming from, you will find out that it's just, sometimes there's a discomfort on the other side, there's a need which is, badly articulated, there's a bias that needs to be debunked. That's so much that uncomfortable and dysfunctional harm really is unintended, really. And so when we learn that, and when we learn how to communicate properly, and we to exercise that that extreme curiosity, and non-judgment, and going that step beyond, it can really undo a lot of it. A lot of situations can be resolved, relatively easily. So yeah, cold showers, ladies.
I'm a little bit with Vianessa. I like to feel how I'm feeling, but you know what? I've thought about this question now for a couple of days since you sent it out, and I've been trying to think about my mindset as a routine, and that idea that I feel defeated and that I crawl into my bed, and I do that. If I feel defeated, I drop my kids off at daycare, I crawl into my bed, I turn off my phone, I watch Netflix, and I don't answer it until 4, until I have to go back and get them. And I just allow myself to be in that space, actually. Usually for me, it comes to the point that by 4 o'clock, I've become so annoyed with myself that I've laid in bed all day, that I haul myself out and say, okay, Melanie, now strap your boots on. It's time to get back to work. That's usually how I deal with most things. And I mean, those days are few and far between, actually. But earlier when I was introducing myself, I talked about myself and my identity as being a Newfoundlander. And actually, that does play a huge role in who I am, in that I come from a culture of hard work. It's born into me. You grow up, you work hard, and you're rewarded for your hard work. And this idea that we're talking about today about meditation and relaxation and focusing, and this idea of mindset is not something that I've grown up with. This is something that I've literally only heard about in the last few years. I think the more I reflect on that, I think my approach to hard work and my nature to be driven is actually my meditation. It's in that hard work. It's in getting up every single day, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, going into work, even if I don't have anything to do that day, just being here, being in the studio, being in my environment, being in what is supposed to inspire me, or even some days not inspire, but just even today here, sitting here. I think this is what drives my mindset to help me deal with the ideas of being defeated. Sitting in this space and thinking about that, like thinking about what I've created to this point, what I've overcome to this point, and just allowing myself to sit in those feelings, or whether it be in bed or being here. I think it's really important that you do that and that you take it on. I don't have a morning routine. I'm not someone who can get up and meditate in the morning. My day usually starts with 2 children under 5 jumping on top of me, and that can be anywhere from 5:30 in the morning to 7 if I'm lucky. And for me, I do check my phone. The first thing I do when I open my eyes in bed is check my phone and see what emails I have to respond to. Can I send an instant messenger message now and just get one item off my plate before I even put my feet on the floor in the morning? That is the reality of my day every single day. And then I try to take the moments that I do have alone to refocus, but not in a strategic way. It's just kind of something that happens organically, I think. And when I do have the bad days where I do feel defeated and I want to crawl in bed, I just allow myself to do that. And I think giving yourself permission, giving yourself a break can actually open up your mind and allow you to have more room for creativity. And I don't dwell on it too much. I don't, sit around and say, God, Melanie, you had that bad day on Monday and you let a day go by where you didn't do so and so. It's fine. I've just learned to accept it. And as I'm growing, I think I've always had an entrepreneurial mindset since my first, from a child, like from being a kid, I used to charge my parents $2 to come in the living room and watch me do dance routines. So I think I've always had that entrepreneurial mindset. I think this idea of defeat and reestablishing things and refocusing is something that is always with you. And as you get older, you learn what it is. But I think you've been dealing with it in a certain way your entire life. Now you have the vocabulary to put to it. And I think you have a comfortable way of dealing with things, a comfortable way that you have dealt with stresses your whole life. And I think it's okay to rely on that. I don't think you need to restructure all the time. It does help to recenter. And I definitely allow myself days to get in the sauna or cold shower or winter swimming. I actually haven't done the winter swimming, but just different activities like this. I do allow myself those days. But for the most part, I think it's just, for me, it's the everyday drive. That's what keeps me going, and thinking about these hardships and giving myself that day of bed and getting annoyed with myself and saying, Melanie, come on, that it's going to be fine tomorrow. And my best friend tells me all the time, this time next year, it won't matter. And I love that saying, actually, because you get up and you realize that actually, yes, I won't even remember this day next year, and it doesn't matter. And today I get up and just keep going forward.
I know so many good nuggets. And what I love about this question is that not all of us were the same. No, what worked for me works for you. What works for you works for other person. So it's like that's the richness of this talk. It's like there's no good or wrong. The question is, your worst moment as a professional woman in the industry, and how do you overcome it? What advice can you share with the people watching you now about overcoming fear? So it's like the two questions are related.
For me personally, what has really worked over a long period of time is setting a better standard of what I expect from myself. And this is not about being competitively driven, but setting a better standard of what I deserve, of how I need to be treated, and what my happiness goals are. And I think these are very, very important. And I think I can't really think of one horrible moment, because I've been working 20 years. There could be many, but I know one thing for a fact, that once in any workplace, in any place, once you start, and I think it's just about general in life. It's not just, you can't really, for me, it doesn't work that way. This is work and this is how I am personally, because your personality does flow into these places, right? And I think all creative fields tend to be a very from the heart place. So it's not really a banker's job where you can say, okay, 9 to 5, and this is it. And the mood from one place doesn't affect the other. But I think what has definitely worked in my favor is setting that high standard and putting it out that, okay, this is acceptable and this is not. This is not what I'm going to put up with. And I think oftentimes it would come as a bit of a surprise to men, and it can probably still be happening for many people who are here today, that, you know, when you're trying to say something and a lot of people try to overtalk to you, I think it's very important to stand your ground and tell them, let me finish whatever I'm saying. And if you feel that, you know, you're not being respected in a forum, have the courage to walk out. Don't be a people pleaser. Set your own high standards. Walk on tables, work on tables that nurture your heart, your soul, your mind, that build you up. Go to places, work with people who are in alignment with, you know, what your value systems are. Oftentimes, you know, when you kind of keep kind of saying, kind of cutting it down that, okay, I'll compromise it, I'll compromise it, I'll compromise it. In the end, you come to a part of, you kind of become somebody who is just not somebody, you know, you can kind of really resonate with. And what's the point? You know, this is your life. You got to be in the spotlight. Things have to kind of work for you. And it's in no way saying that the other people are wrong. Or they are who they are. You know, this is who you are. And I think setting those standards for yourself is important, and also recognizes that if certain situations, certain tables are not working for you, you have it in you to create your own tables. And, you know, the sky's the limit.
So true. Create your own space. You can do it.
In terms of like the worst thing that ever happened to me as a professional woman, I would say it was getting fired from my first job for the first time. As a creative, I've been in the workforce since I was 17 years old. And being a creative, we tend to take a lot of different jobs to support our habit until we can get to the point where we actually can do something with our calling, with our true vocation. And so I remember the first time I actually got fired from a job, and it wasn't even a job I even cared about. It was like a temp job that turned into a full-time job, that turned into like something entirely different than what it was promised to me. And I just remember the feeling of like picking up the mail and looking in the local paper and seeing an ad for my job. And they hadn't even told me yet, right? So I was just like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And I actually had the courage to go into the boss and saying, oh, there's an ad in the paper, for this position. Are you looking? And he goes, yes, as a matter of fact, I am. Like, and he goes, I'll see you on Monday. And I'm like, no, you won't. No, you won't. I actually walked out. But I was devastated because the way I found out about it, I thought it was really bad. In that moment, it took all of my strength to basically realize what was happening. And I'm like, if I'm going to leave a job, it's going to be on my terms, not somebody else's. And I've just kind of like looked at it that way from that point on. It's like, if I'm not happy, if I'm not, I have to do a lot of thinking. To Vanessa's point earlier, I don't discount my feelings. The thing is that I don't allow them to stick around too long. And if it takes a while, then it takes a while. If it takes the time to get to a place where I can actually start focusing and meditating again, but I do have those days too. And I think it's important to work through, what feelings you have, because if we don't work through them, then they stick around and they become this field of hurt where you're just like constantly rehashing stuff and going over it again and again and again in your mind. And that it doesn't serve. So you get to the point where you can actually say, I can figure this out. Like, I lost my job. Okay, I was devastated. I cried. I called people. But at some point I said, okay, I'll figure this out. I'll be okay. It'll be all right. And then you go on to the next job. And then you go on to the next job. And, and when I moved here, and lockdown happened, it's like, oh, I can't work. Whoa, yeah, I can work in TV and film. So yeah, it's figure outable, and it's just like, just allowing yourself to be open to possibilities, and just keep saying, as Neha said earlier, just have rock solid belief in yourself, and just don't let people talk down to you, and don't let people set your boundaries. You set your own boundaries. in your own terms?
Well, in terms of fear, I think fear in business often stems from comparison, and there's no need to compare yourself to anyone, especially if you take a step back and look objectively. Nobody knows what they're doing. I have worked with so many powerful CEOs and different companies, and I worked at Meta, for God's sakes, and nobody knows what they're doing. So, if you have an idea for something, go for it. The worst that can happen is somebody tells you no, or it doesn't work out. And then you learn from it and you keep it moving. So don't let fear rule your life, because it is pretty useless.
Oh, so inspiring to hear this all. The worst thing that happened to me professionally was, I think at some point, like after becoming a matter and then hitting the crystal ceiling very clearly, like, and being overlooked for promotion, and when everything was like leading to a natural evolution, and seeing my male peers like progressing from title to title and putting the request out there, and then it was never really taken into consideration. So it took me a while to just kind of like let it sink, and then realize that I should have left. You're stressed, kids are small, like you're fragile in a certain way, and so part of you starts kind of like trying to normalize and say like, oh no, but still I'm doing a great job and I love what I do and I'm in an international setting. So you're trying to hang on to the positive, but something inside of me was clearly felt that it was time to move on. And so what I did, and it's something that you, Rosa, put up this morning as well, like I really invested in my personal brand. I started to really work on my reputation within the industry. So since things were not moving as I wanted internally, I worked on the external. I developed strong partnerships with clients, with customers, worked with the industry, developed relationship with the industry press, started going to industry events, and then was invited to speak. And that helped me to pivot into that and other careers opportunities, and move on basically, and find my spot, and go from technology into content, and go from marketing into inclusive leadership, and like develop the pivot that I was needing and deserving.
Vanessa, I swear to God, we're reading from the same notes. I'm looking down through this and I'm like, yes. In terms of the question, my worst moment as a woman in the professional industry, actually, I do have one, and that is that I went into a collaboration and partnership with an organization that I trusted and put my faith in, without fully understanding the contract that I signed. And it put me in a very stressful situation for a long period of time. And yeah, and it wasn't good. It actually caused me a lot of financial stress, but also mental stress, and time away from my family, and time away from the projects that I really wanted to work on and that I felt were really important. And I took this project because I felt that it was going to be the project that propelled me forward, both in my career, but also in the projects that I was working on. And I felt like it could help my community and the artists that I represent. But in the end, it actually sucked up all of my time because I didn't fully understand what I was signing on to. To get over it, I actually had to accept that this wasn't something that happened to me, but it was something that I actively chose to get into. I signed that contract, I did it, and I did it without fully considering what the consequence would be if it didn't go exactly as I had planned. And so my advice on that is definitely read all the words on your contracts and have a contract that also makes sense for you. I learned it the hard way, but honestly, I do feel like the universe puts lessons out there for you to learn. And if you don't learn it the first time, because I had a project not to that scale, but where I entered something where I didn't feel it was right for me, and I didn't learn my lesson the first time, and then the universe threw it back at me doublefold, and I got into a much larger project that put me in a situation where I was compromised and my company was compromised, and I learned it the second time. So I think that I think in that particular situation, to really be aware of what you are committing to when you commit to anything, whether it's even if it's just projects with friends. Really understanding what those boundaries are. And in terms of fear, I've also thought a lot about these questions, Rosa, and fear, it's not something that I use, it's not something I view as a debilitating emotion. It's not, I use fear as a motivator. If I feel like, even today I was fearful of even introducing myself this afternoon, like those things, but I use it as a platform to push me forward so I can grow and evolve. And I think that we put so much stigma around fear sometimes that it does stop us from doing things. But actually, when you feel that, you're pushing yourself into an uncomfortable zone, and that zone will allow you to grow and get bigger and move forward. And without fear, we don't have that. We don't know what our boundaries are or if we can expand them. So I say use it as a motivator and push forward and push through it and get to the next step.
Thank you so much. We didn't have time for questions from the audience. I want to sit down with each one of you and talk, like a cup of coffee and, and talk more about all these things. Unfortunately, we don't have more time. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being part of this roundtable. It was amazing.